feel like you should prepare to give a talk. Like you should make slides, and then you should practice them in front of a mirror or people. That's not what I do. What I do is I made all these slides this morning, and now I'm going to talk over them. And it might not be the talk you need. It might not be the talk you deserve. But it's the talk that amused me the most this morning. And so that's what we're going to go with. It could also be called, and it's a DevOps Days. I like DevOps Days. Anyone like DevOps Days? Who's ever been to a DevOps Days? Yeah? Yeah? Who's ever been to an open space? Who is looking forward to having conversations with other human beings? Anyone? Yeah? Let's do this. All right. So this is an alternative title, which is even more amusing because I don't even drink anymore. But so who's ever had to gather water? Yeah? Anyone ever had to walk miles with water? Anyone ever had a well? What would your life be like right now if you had to spend, 4 hours a day making sure your family had water? Even 2 hours or 1 hour. We kind of take for granted, I take for granted, that I can drink water, right? That changed a lot over time, but there's still places on this planet where you have to carry water, right? There's probably still places where you have to SSH into servers. It's going to be fine. So I made a little agenda. I'm not promising to stick strictly to this agenda, but I just wanted to put it up there so you guys have an idea what we're going to do today. Now, Nashville is a very special place, and as Nick already said, it's special to me because in some ways my DevOps journey starts in Nashville. And there's other people that I know that live here, and there's actually kind of a vibrant community around some of these things. I know there was a comment earlier about trying to build up this community, to build up this conversation, but I feel like there's always this kind of nucleus, and I feel this is true about lots of places. Right? There's talent everywhere, and that's another talk, and I gave it, and he referenced it earlier, and you should go watch it. It's really good online. But for me, Nashville, and I probably wouldn't have come to speak at DevOps Days if it wasn't in Nashville. So I came because it's like Nashville, so it's kind of like this seminal part of DevOps to me, because in many ways, the journey that was Puppet, the journey was DevOps started with a lot of conversations for me here. Right, and a lot of ideas that are in that kind of initial or the generation of tools around configuration management. Like Luke had hours of configuring Solaris servers in Nashville before he started working on CF Engine and then Puppet and whatever. So Nashville, and you guys have a beautiful place, right? It's a nice place to live. You guys, I don't know. This guy looks skeptical. So I just wanted to thank Nashville for having me, having me here, because it's definitely a special place. And by the end of it, I want everyone to realize that you could do anything anywhere, right? Like in 2016, and really going back a decade now, you basically have everything you need to build Google, to build Twitter, to build Facebook, to build Puppet, right? You have that. You have it right now because we have the internet, right? And we're in Nashville, and I know I have the internet because I used it this morning in this building, right? So no excuses. Yes. All right, so I'm going to introduce myself just a little bit. It was already talked about, so I'm just going to go really fast. But I did a lot of startup stuff, and I did. I did 2 venture-funded startups before I got involved with Puppet. Then I did some OpenStack stuff, and I've been really focused on like this evolution of high-performing teams and how that interacts with process and culture, even before I started anything to do with configuration management. That's always been my fascination. I did some writing for O'Reilly around web operations. I've been doing DevOps Days and Blossy going back to 2008, 2009. And right now I work for Pivotal, which is nice because they pay for me to fly on planes to Nashville. And my hotel room, which is really nice. And I look different sometimes, so next time you see me, I might look different. But this is also a very important slide because it has my Twitter handle, which is the easiest way to get my attention. And if you ever want to talk to me, that's the best way. But just so you don't get confused next time you see me, I might look very different. And then also, as mentioned, like I did a couple other talks before, so I'm going to make an album compilation. I'm going to sell that because everyone has to sell stuff apparently, and so why not? I also want everyone to know I'm a villager, and we're just going to move on from there. So, and that'll be relevant later in the day, probably. All right, we're living in a world where more and more of the world becomes constantly connected to the totality of human knowledge. We face the insurmountable opportunity that every aspect of human performance and experience that can be transformed by software will be. What are the challenges? What are the risks? What are we going to do about it? Right? Like everyone's talking about transformation. Like literally everyone's trying to sell transformation, right? We face the insurmountable opportunity that every aspect of human performance and experience can be transformed by software will be. There's insurmountable opportunity to transform human experience. And I would argue, and this isn't actually the main focus of what I want to talk about today, that in large part, DevOps is about optimizing human performance and experience with software, and the thing that you're optimizing is actually building software, right? So you're using software to optimize building more software. What's that? Russian dolls, right? So this kind of stuff, I mean, people say all this, and I've had literally even in the last year, I've had this exact thing with different people, because there's a lot of personas, right? Everyone's seeing things from different perspectives. So I've heard people say, DevOps is too much about ops. And then I've heard the exact same statement, opposite, DevOps is too much about developers. And then I've heard DevOps is too much about tools. And then I heard DevOps is too much about culture. And I just want to talk about these other things that like no one actually understands, because I keep saying things like Pareto inefficient Nash equilibriums, and I really want to talk about that, and there's like 2 people that could talk to me now. Maybe there'll be more later, but I went to the Enterprise Summit. I didn't actually go there, but I wandered around and I saw these conversations, and people are like I feel like there was progress at the Enterprise Summit because they got past the point where it was all about making excuses for why the enterprise is different. So that's progress. And then it's like, oh, that's a really great conversation that I had in 2010. You guys, I'll come back in a couple more years and we can talk about organizational learning. It's probably fine. So these things that get said over and over that are kind of being actionable, and especially when you start talking to the CEOs or whatever, they probably sound a lot like this next image, where people are like they kind of know it seems like a good idea, and if it wasn't a good idea, it wouldn't be rainbows and pandas. But what's going on? Oh. So there's also this other theme that I've had in my personal career, right? I did a couple things, and I've been working with Fortune 500 a lot lately, and I've basically talked to all the big banks and a bunch of 3-layer agencies and like try to help them do continuously delivered microservices with container scheduling, blah, 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 who cares? But when the people first meet me, they're like, you have to be serious. You're like, you cannot, like you're never serious. What are you doing? I'm like, well, this is just who I am. I'm trying to do work. And then they're like, wow, you really crossed the line now. You got to be serious. And then after we actually start doing work for a little while, they're like, can you just chill out? Like, why does everything have to be so urgent all the time? And then after a little while, people start to tell me this, which is adorable because I am. But moving on and going back to some stuff John said, and this is just the too long didn't read. I believe very strongly, I believe this is true, that every industry is being disrupted, right? So you're going to build a software company or you're going to lose someone who is. Not only that, but this new paradigm, this new dominant paradigm means that you're going to be able to do this way, or you're going to lose someone who is, right? Duh. And then last but not least, that as a technologist in this industry right now, the best thing you could do for yourself and the best thing you could do for your organization is to be able to learn, right? In a world where the technology is constantly changing, the problems you need to solve are constantly changing, nothing will pay more dividends for you or your organization than the capacity to change your behavior, right? And learning is all about changing behavior. This is another talk that I gave, so I'm not going to give that talk today. But if you didn't change your behavior, you didn't actually learn, right? You just got new information. And this is really easy to prove with certain things like sports, chess, music, right? Like you didn't learn anything. You just like acquired information. So you got to change behavior. You didn't learn anything, or you're going to lose to someone else, blah, blah, blah. So people hear this, and they're like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Like everyone wants the blue pill, right? Everyone's like, give me the blue pill. And then there's like, there's all these people and they're peddling silver bullets and they're like, oh, well, here's the blue pill. And I was like, yay. And then my pill's bluer. Buy my bluer pill. Or you go, because you have, and this is not just DevOps, right? Like this is a recurring pattern with all these movements. So you have like Agile, and it's like, oh, Agile has this stuff. And then, pretty soon people are like, it's a silver bullet. And then now Agile doesn't scale. So you got to have SAFe, it's the bluer pill. So you can get scalier Agile, right? Whatever. But I think the real problem is it's actually work, right? So people write, there's some stuff that came out, people wrote blog posts. It's like, oh, DevOps is disintegrating. It's like there's this golden age where DevOps was like all rainbow pandas. And like now all of a sudden it's not. It's like, no. It sucked. It always sucked. There's like a bunch of servers won't do what I tell them. A bunch of people won't do what I tell them. Like, it always sucked. It was always hard. And this is a picture of me trying to manage OpenStack. I just threw that in there. Anyone else have a similar picture? So the next slide, like I said, everything's about amusing me, but I don't know if you guys ever heard this story. And I'm sure if you live around Nashville, you probably have friends who you could like tell similar stories about. But there's a story from a couple years ago about a man at a bar that happened to be kind of on a bayou. And there was a sign on the wall that said, warning, alligator. And he didn't think that should mean anything. And so he yelled something, and then he jumped in the water. And within seconds, the alligator introduced himself. And that's kind of the end of the story. But the best part of the story is the guy actually looked like this. And I feel like that's a pretty good metaphor for how a lot of organizations and people approach trying to solve some of their problems. All right, so it's not that I want you to, not go swimming, because, I don't want to keep you from swimming, but you might want to, not swim right there, right now. Just saying. Hold my beer. This is something I believe very, very strongly, and I think it's obvious if you see the results. And I kind of came to some of this stuff, and I'm going to show you a little bit, some snippets of the organizational learning talk in a minute, but that the people that understand the principles, they're able to do the practices because they're obvious. They're able to use the tools because they're obvious, or they make their own tools that they need because the tools that exist aren't fixing the problem. Right, the opposite of the blue pill is understanding the principles, right, and doing that work. And the other thing that and it's kind of derived from the principles, is that why is a much stronger construct. It's a much more powerful thing to have available to you than what. If you understand why, you could do many, many things, and this applies to every layer of technology, right? If you are a developer and you are looking at code and you understand what it does, that gives you a certain amount of power to reproduce what it does. If you understand why it exists, then if you understand what the business is doing, all these other contexts, you could decide that code does not need to exist, right? You could decide that that is much better solved some other way. That's very powerful, and that applies to everything we do. So I thought about why, right? And I was in a very privileged position in the DevOps movement as a function of the stuff I was working on to see a lot of the big web built, to see a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the applications that were built over the last 10 years using these types of tools. And I also was in a position to try to help people do it better. So people would come to me or to the companies I was working for and ask for help. And they're like, will you help us? And I was like, sure, I'd love to help you. Let's go do this. And this is, I'm sure, people from Shafer or any of the other vendors will tell similar stories, that you go into an organization and on face they look similar. They have the same rough number of employees, the same number of servers, the same similar technical challenges, and you give them the exact same presentations, the exact same tools, the exact same training, and one of them will get results that are amazing, and one of them will complain that you didn't help them, right? And what I came to realize after doing a number of engagements with large $300 billion companies, that after trying my best to help them, we're asking, well, is there some way that we could do DevOps but not change anything? Then I realized that this success and failure, the bifurcation between those organizations that could take what you gave them and the organizations that really couldn't change their behavior, was this degree of organizational learning, right? And this is, again, I said I wasn't going to give this talk, but there's an hour-long version of this online. And this is the 7 dimensions of organizational learning that was done by 2 women professors that are amazing, talking about just different things that they'd observe, and they made this matrix, and there's a survey you could take and kind of try to map yourself onto this thing. But if you understand all these dimensions and you look at what's going on in your organization, then I think what I believed 3 years ago when I gave this talk, and no one did this, is that if you were able to take and internalize where you're deficient in these dimensions, where you could improve in these dimensions, that it would actually help your organizations be better. And that, going back to this primary thing that you want to be able to change your behavior, that the learning organization, one that has the capacity to integrate people and structures in order to move forward towards continuous learning and change. That seems like a pretty good idea, given that everything's changing all the time. Another thing I did in presentations right around the same time is I had this model, and this isn't my model, it's from Sengi, and it's from the 5th discipline book. But it basically, and this is a rather complicated version, and now I understand why people can't really talk about it, because it's actually complicated and they're still trying to carry water. But the idea here is that you have this domain of enduring change where abstractions live, like the Platonic ideals of configuration management and continuous delivery or whatever live over there. And then you have this other stuff where work actually gets done, right? The domain of action, where there's tools and there's methods and there's the practices that like the rubber meets the road. And people kind of need to go back and forth to improve, right? If you are only in the domain of enduring change, you don't get any work done, right? That's analysis paralysis. And if you're only in the domain of action, then you're still stuck in whatever year you made your decision. Because the other thing that I get to see, and I see this constantly in my day job, is you go into a company and you're like, okay, I'm here to help. What are you guys doing? What's your tech stack? And you're like, da 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 da. It's like, whatever, WebSphere. And you're like, oh, okay. So you guys stopped learning in 2004. All right. Well, let's try to catch you up to 2016. So that's like too much focus in the action. They're getting work done, but they're not getting better at doing their work, right? I told you about this later. We're not going to dwell on it. Ask me about Pareto inefficient Nash equilibria after the break. Because I really, really wish we could have good conversations about this stuff, and it makes me sad that we can't. Who knows what this is? Anyone? This is an aqueduct. Who knows what an aqueduct does? So aqueducts are systems that leverage gravity that were built by the Romans to bring water from wherever to the cities. And they built amazing swimming pools and saunas and like crazy stuff, gathering water from miles and miles, some cases tens of miles, maybe even hundreds of miles, with this system of kind of just gravity-driven, basically like man-made rivers, right? And that's pretty cool. And I kind of feel like we're at that stage now. We're kind of at the aqueduct stage of this DevOps transformation journey, like as an industry. Like the bleeding edge right now is we kind of have aqueducts now. There's still a lot of people that do this every day, right? There's still a lot of doit5.sh, .old, backspace. Maybe it'll work better this time. Run it. Oh shit, sudo, whatever. It's probably gonna work this time. Has anyone ever worked like that? Anyone ever seen that movie? I did that many times. I did that a lot. But there's also places that are like this, right? Because a lot of stuff that's happening right now is kind of bleeding out of things that are, maybe 10 years old inside of Google or inside of some of these organizations, right? Like they did different things. And there's a similar arc that happens, with other aspects of how we do things, other parts of this. So what I'm going to try to do, because I found another model that's simpler, is give us a simpler model we could talk about. And this is the single loop learning model. Single loop, double loop learning. Does anyone know this stuff? So there's a lot of things out there, talk about cycles, the OODA loop or whatever, Toyota Kata, something, whatever. So the single loop learning is basically this idea that you have a plan and you try to do it. And like you see if your plan's working and you adjust and then you do it again. You make a new plan and you do work and that is a loop, right? And that's something most of us probably do naturally, right? Maybe we're not very good at checking, maybe we're not very good at adjusting, but if you keep getting paid, you're probably okay at doing some work, right? I don't have time to learn new things because I'm too busy getting things done. When you find organizations that are kind of stuck in 2004, it's because they've been doing work that whole time, right? It's not that they didn't do anything for a decade. They did work the whole time. What double loop learning introduces is this idea that in the planning itself, there's assumptions. There's some model that you have about how the world works that allows you to make a plan that you believe, in your heart of hearts, will help you accomplish your goal. And you do that work and you adjust, but the model might be wrong, right? So what do you do to explicitly revisit the model that you have in your head about doing the work that you're doing so that you could do it better next time, right? And in some ways, a lot of the organizational learning, although it's a little more detailed and a little more complicated, really just comes back to what are the processes and structures and the methods to get better at adjusting the model that we have so that it's better. Because if the model's closer to the reality, hopefully our plan will work this time, right? Has anyone ever read statistics about IT projects that like all fail? Something like 66% of IT projects are considered failures. Why do you think that is? Well, one of the things I believe now is that the plan was made by people who were simply wrong. There were so many bad assumptions in that plan from the beginning, had no chance of succeeding, right? With respect to the time, with respect to the resources, with respect to the capabilities of the organization, or even the capabilities of the technology, right? Who's ever been on the project like that? It's like the first day you saw it as a technologist, you're like, no fucking way. Nuh-uh. And that's like the next 2 years, right? It's like planned out. Like, this happens. Like this is happening right now. So this is maybe a little bit too much, to tell your boss what you're doing for the next hour. But there's a quote from Einstein that I'm fond of, and that is that if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solutions, right? So what he's essentially arguing here is that if I can get the best possible underlying model, if I can get the best possible underlying understanding of what I'm actually trying to solve, then the chance that I solve it, or the chance I'll get a good solution, is better. That's my interpretation. And the thing that I'd want kind of everyone in this room to understand is, it's like you have so much opportunity to work on interesting things, right? And you have a global, this is what DevOps means to me. Yeah, we're optimizing things with software, but it's also a global community of practice, right? There's a bunch of hard problems that I could solve a lot faster than a lot of people, not because I'm smart. I am pretty smart, but that's another thing. But because I can also get people to respond to me. And I know those people, right? And I go to these conferences and I meet them. And like they work on this tool, or they worked on Nginx, or they worked on Apache, or they worked on this web server, or they worked on Spring, or they worked on this thing. And it's like leveraging that global community of practice that's solving similar problems to you is a force multiplier far and beyond whatever kind of your own talents and abilities are, right? And so and that could be done at every level. So the Nash DevOps, this local community can reinforce itself. There's a global community. Everyone has IRC, everyone has Slack, whatever. You can participate in these things, and we could build better models, right? I think there's models that are emerging. We don't necessarily have a good language yet. I feel like there's a missing pattern language kind of on the verge of coming out about how to think about these architectures, how to think about this new way of doing things. But it won't happen unless we do it. So it's on you. No pressure. What I also think is that there's a tendency, and I put a little cargo culting picture earlier, for people to read a book or hear a conference talk and they're like, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do exactly what I heard. And like that might help you. And if you don't understand principles yet, then that's a way to sort of get some practices. And it might be better than what you're doing, but you're still not really on that journey yet. Like understand their context, understand what they're trying to do, and go seek that. Don't try to cargo cult too much. So don't seek these buzzwords, the DevOps, continuous delivery of microservices. What you actually want to go after is this. That's what I'm asking you to do. And recognize that it's not about a tool, it's not about a process, it's not about any one thing. It's about all of it together. That this thing we're optimizing is social technical, and that the tools inform the people in the process, and the people in the process inform the tools, and that is one thing. So you can't really try to treat them separately. We have to solve both together. We're all part of this system. So in the home stretch, the call to action, as I promised in my agenda, is question everything. Don't limit yourself with labels, DevOps or otherwise. Like that's, when you see something that can help you, you take it. Whenever I see someone say, that's not DevOps or that's not Agile, I'm like, stop. Find your why. If you understand why, you'll get a what. What will come? Easy. You gotta get some mud on your hands. You can't solve all these problems by thinking about them. You gotta come from the domain of learning into the domain of action. Play to win. And Nashville, I know you can. You can win from Nashville. So what color? Choose your adventure. And last but not least, thank you, Nashville. I'm not here to answer questions. I'm here to have conversations. Sure. You want a picture of it? Sorry, flip past it. Computer, come on, catch up. There we go. "32 minutes with the vendor pitch." Woo! Like I said, I have to run home. I have to fly home and drive to Arizona, or else I'd hang out with you tonight. But I'll be around for some of the open space. I'll probably teach you how to play Werewolf. And if you want to talk about any of the stuff I just talked about, or anything to do with continuously delivering microservices with containers, then I'll be around the rest of the day. Good? Good deal.